In this video, I'll show you how to build a personal finance automation tool in Python. We'll use modules like Pandas, Plotly, and Streamlit, and you'll get something that looks like this. Let me just give you a quick demo because it's pretty cool. Now, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I hate how the bank represents or shows different transactions, and I find a lot of time, at least with the bank that I'm with, it's difficult to understand where I'm actually spending money. And for me, I want to know, what did I spend in the month before, so I can kind of look at those categories, maybe cut some things out, and just be diligent with my finances. So the way that I've set up this tool here, and I'll show you how to build it step by step, is that you can just upload something like a bank statement. So here I have a CSV file which represents my bank statement. It's actually just kind of some fake data that I created, but it's in the same format as my original bank statement. You can see that when I load this in here, this is using Streamlit, by the way, in Python, the UI, we get a list of all of the different transactions that occurred. So we have the dates, we have all of the details of these transactions, we have the amount, obviously, and then we have the categories, and we can kind of sort by those, and we can categorize these or change them as we see fit. Now, as we move down here, you can see that we have a summary of all of the expenses and what we spent in this statement, and then we get this kind of pie chart here where it shows us, hey, you spent this much on travel, shopping, etc., and we can zoom in on this. Now, it might look a little bit complicated, but this is actually relatively easy to build. I'm going to show you how to adjust this so it works with pretty much any bank statement, and of course with any currency or categories as well. In my case, the currency here is dirham. That's what's used in the UAE where I currently live. But if this is in US dollars, for example, that's totally fine. I also set up another category here where it shows you how many payments were made towards the card. So you can see, how much you spent or how much you paid back on, in this example, a credit card versus how much you spent. All right, so that's the demo of what we'll be building here. And obviously this is going to focus heavily on Python, so you should have some experience with that. But with that in mind, I do first want to share with you a great resource that will complement this video really well, and that's DataCamp and their Finance Fundamentals in Python learning track. Now, I've actually been using DataCamp for a while now, especially when I want to learn something new in a structured, hands-on way. Now, that's why when I started diving deeper into using Python for personal finance, I found their Finance Fundamentals in Python track to be a really great fit. This track includes over 25 hours of content and covers everything from learning Python basics to analyzing stock portfolios with real-world data from NASDAQ, Amex, and S&P 100. You'll work with libraries like Pandas, NumPy, Stats Models, and Pyfolio, and you can do all of this straight from your browser. Now, what I really like is that you're not just watching, you're actually coding through short, focused lessons. And for someone like me who really loves project-based learning, as you can see by tutorials like this works really well. Now, if you're interested in using Python for making data-driven financial decisions, or you just want a great project to add on your resume, then definitely check it out. I've left a link at the top of the description, so it should be easy to find. Now, a massive thank you to DataCamp for sponsoring this video and for building something that I would honestly recommend even if they weren't. With that said, let's get back into it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. Now, obviously, what we need in order to work with this project is we need some data. Now, you can use your own data, or you can just use some data that I'm providing as some sample data for this project. So if you go to the link in the description right now, you're going to see a GitHub repository, and in that GitHub repository, there'll be this sample bank statement.csv. Now, this is very similar to what my real bank statement might actually look like, but I've just obfuscated the data by changing some of the details and the values here. So obviously, I'm not revealing anything too personal. But if you just want to use like some sample data, you can download it there. But if you want to use your own data, all you need to do is just get it in some CSV format. CSV stands for comma separated values, and if you want to do it exactly as I'm doing it in this video, then you want the columns to be date, details, amount, currency, debit or credit, and then status. We're not going to use all of these, but the point is this is kind of the information that we have access to, but I'll show you how you can adjust this so it will work on your own bank statements. Now, a quick note, what I actually did here is I downloaded a bank statement from my real bank, and it came in an XLSX format. This is like a Microsoft Excel file. Now, what I did is I just opened that up in Google Docs here, and then I went to File, and I went to Download, and I just exported it as a CSV file. So if you have a spreadsheet, you can just save it or export it as a CSV file. It should be pretty easy to do that. Or again, you can just download your bank statement, and if it's in a CSV format, it should be good to go already, and you can just adjust some of the code that we're about to write. Now, what we really want to do here for this project is we want to allow it so that we can bring in this CSV file. We're going to manually actually categorize transactions, but then we're going to save that categorization. So later, if we bring in another bank statement, any transaction that we've already categorized will just work based on the kind of details field here. So for example, once we categorize one Spinneys, right, and we say, okay, this is groceries. Now, any other time we see Spinneys from any bank statement, we know this should be groceries, so it will automatically categorize it. You'll see what I mean later on, but that's kind of how we do things here. We bring in this CSV file, we allow ourselves to kind of add or create these categories, and then to set the categories here for each transaction. We then save those, so anytime we load this file again, or we load any CSV file, we're able to grab all of those categorizations very quickly. So it is really an automation tool, sorry. Now I'm going to leave this open just so we can reference the UI when we start building things later on. But for now, I'm going to imagine that you've got some kind of CSV file that's in a format like this. And again, you can just download one from the link in the description. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a file. I'll just call this main.py, and we're going to start installing the dependencies that we need for this project. So what I've done is I've opened a new folder. Okay, this new folder is in VS Code. You can work in any code editor that you want. And I'm going to start installing here the dependencies that we need. So I'm going to type pip install, and then I'm going to write these out. Now we're going to use Streamlit. This is how we make that really nice UI that you saw. It's very simple, and I'll talk more about it. We're going to install Pandas. We're going to install Plotly, and we're going to install NumPy. Okay, now pip is a package manager in Python that allows us to do this. If you know about virtual environments, you can do it inside of there. If not, you can just use pip if you're on Windows. And if you're on Mac or Linux, you can use the pip3 command, and this should install all of the dependencies that you need. So we're going to run that pip install, all of those different dependencies, and then we should be good to go here once that finishes. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to keep zooming in here so you guys can see this. And now let's start writing some code. Okay, so for our code here, we're going to start with our imports. We're going to import Streamlit as st. Don't worry, again, I'll explain what we're doing here. We're going to import Pandas as pd. And Pandas is something that's going to allow us to really easily load our CSV files. We're going to import Plotly, okay, .express as px. Now this is something that allows us to really quickly make plots or graphs. So that pie chart that you saw, we made that with Plotly, and it's like super simple to do that. So I'll show you that with this library. We're going to import JSON because we're going to be saving a JSON file with all of our different categories that we are kind of, categorizing the transactions with. And then we're going to import OS, which stands for operating system. Now, the first thing that we want to do with Streamlit here is we just want to set the page configuration and give the page a title. So to do that, we can say st.set_page config like this. And then we can give the page a title. So we can say page_title is equal to something like, simple finance app. Okay, we can give the page an icon. So we can say page icon is equal to, and sorry, the autocomplete is really messing me up here. And I'm going to put in an emoji. So I'll just put like, this money bag emoji. Okay. And then lastly, we can say the layout is equal to wide. All right, sorry about the cut there. I just disabled my autocomplete because that was quite annoying. Now at this point, we've done the imports, we've installed everything, we've set the page configuration. So I want to show you how you can run the Streamlit app, because once it's running, you actually don't need to keep rerunning it. You can just refresh it, and then it will take the changes directly from this file. Now Streamlit works a little bit differently than other UI libraries you may have seen before. And essentially what it does is it keeps rerunning this Python script anytime state changes within the application. So it's a little bit of a weird way to think about things. And I have an entire course on Streamlit if you're curious about the UI library itself and more of the details. So I'll link that on screen right now. In this video, I'll go through stuff relatively quickly, and I won't explain all of the ins and outs of Streamlit, but you'll get enough information to be able to build, well, this pretty simple UI. So in order to run our Streamlit application, we're just going to open up our terminal here. I want to go to terminal, and we're just going to run the command Streamlit run, and then the name of our application, which is main.py. So obviously make sure you're in the same location as your Python file, and then you can run this command, and it should just open up this application for you. Now you can see that it's running on localhost port 8502. That's because my other Streamlit app is running on 8501, and you can see the location right here in your terminal. So now Streamlit is running, and anytime I refresh my page here, it's going to rerun this Python script, and any change that I've made here will automatically be applied. So if you want to do something really simple with Streamlit, you can say it's like st.write, hello world or something. This will just write something directly onto the page. And then if I come back here and I refresh, you can see that we have hello world. Okay, so anyways, we're going to move on here. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up a file upload, and then we need to load in that file so that we can start using it, because obviously that's kind of the core of the application. So in terms of doing this, we're going to make a function called main. Inside this main function, we're going to start setting up the UI, and then we'll have some other functions that handle the various logic. So here we're going to say st.title. This just writes a title to the page. And we're going to say this is our simple finance dashboard, but you can call this whatever you want. Okay, now beneath this, we're going to set up an upload file box. So we're going to say uploaded file is equal to st.file_uploader. This is built into Streamlit. It's just a component that allows you to upload a file. And we can write kind of like the prompt that we want here. So we're going to say upload your transaction CSV file, and then we can specify the type that we want to be allowed to upload, which is going to be a list, and this will contain CSV. Now, if you wanted to load a PDF or something here, then obviously you would change this to be PDF, or you would add that as an additional type. Okay, so now we have upload file. Now, the way that we handle kind of inputs in Streamlit is a lot different than we would in something like React, and we can literally just say this. We can say if uploaded file is not none, okay, which just means, hey, did we upload some file here? Did this change to actually store a file? If it did, then what we can do is we can load in some transactions. So we can do something like our df, which is a data frame, is equal to load_transactions. Okay, and this is going to be a function that will load, or that will write, sorry, in 1 second, and we're going to take our uploaded file. Now let me just quickly write this function and I'll explain what's going on. So I'm going to say define load transactions. Okay, and we're going to take, I guess, just some file here. And then for now, we're just going to say pass. Okay, and obviously we should spell transactions correctly so that this function works. All right, so the way this works in Streamlit is when we have something like an input field, this variable will store whatever's in that input field. So in this case, as soon as the user actually uploads a file, the file will be stored here in this uploaded file kind of variable. So then here we can have an if statement. We say, okay, well, if we actually did upload a file, if this changed to be something other than none, then we can load this file using the load transactions function. So let's just save this really quickly and look at our UI. And you can see that when we refresh here, actually, for some reason, it's not showing anything. And that's because we didn't call the main function. Of course. So let's go down here and call the main function. So we actually render this part of the UI, and let's go back here and run. And you can see that we get our simple finance dashboard, and then we have the ability here to upload a file. And of course, we can select the file directly from the folder where we have our CSV file and press open. It shows the file right here, and then we could remove it or we could upload something else. Okay, cool. So that's that. We now have the upload file component. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to load the data frame or load our transactions. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that using something called Pandas. So first, we're going to add a simple try catch block here, a try except block, because there could be an issue loading our file. So we're going to say try, and we're going to say data frame is equal to PD, which is pandas, .read_CSV, and we're just going to pass the file here. Now, Pandas is very good at working with things like CSV files, so we can actually load our entire CSV file, automatically detect all of the columns that we have, and then group all of the different rows and grab all of the different values that we have and kind of separate them out. So that's why we're using Pandas, and I'll talk to you more about that in 1 second. Now I'm just going to do an exception, and I'm going to say accept exception as E down here. And if there is an error, then I'm going to use this st.error component. And what this does is just show the error on screen. So I'm going to use an f string, and I'm going to say f error. Let's do this here, error processing file. Okay. And then I'm going to say string E. And I'm going to wrap this in some braces. If you've never used an f string in Python, this just allows you to embed variables inside of a string. You can put any expression or variable inside of these braces here as long as you put an f at the beginning of the string. So here we're putting string E, which is the exception, so we'll show that on screen. And then we're just going to return none here to indicate, hey, yeah, like there's no data frame that we're able to load. Cool. Otherwise, what we can do here is we can return the data frame that we loaded, but first I just want to print this out or get some logging information so we can see what the data frame looks like. Now in Streamlit, I believe we actually can simply just write the data frame to the screen and see what it looks like. So if we say st.write, we can just look at this loaded CSV file and just kind of test that out and do some debugging. So let me refresh, browse my files, grab this, and you can see that we can just write the entire data frame, and we can see all of the values that we have in our CSV file. Okay, so Streamlit is super cool, and that's obviously why we're using it. Now, the thing here is that we do want to clean up the data here a little bit because, for example, the amount, having these commas in here can mess things up for us. And we also want to separate things like credits and debits and just make sure that everything is kind of in the correct format so that when we start doing different, finance operations, we don't have any errors with like specifically the commas in the numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an operation to clean up some of the data that we're getting here using Pandas, So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to say df.columns, and I'll explain what this is in 1 second, is equal to a list. And I'm going to say column dot, let's do call dot strip for call in df dot columns. Now in Pandas, you can grab all of the different columns in a data frame, and a data frame is what we've just created here when we loaded in this CSV file. And the way that we do that is by accessing, well, the columns. Now these columns here are this, it's the first row of our CSV file where it dictates essentially the name of all of the different things that we have in the data frame. So in this case, we have a date, which are these details, amount, currency, debit, credit, status, etc. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to remove any leading or trailing white spaces from those columns to make sure that we don't get any errors when we start matching up the columns later on. So for example, if I had like a bunch of spaces here, which is possible, I don't want that to mess something up. So what I'm doing is I'm just writing some code that is essentially going to remove any of those from the column names so that things are just a little bit cleaner. So I'm saying the columns that I'm going to have in my data frame are going to be equal to the existing columns. So I'm saying for call in df.columns, but I'm simply going to remove all of the leading and trailing white spaces and do that in a Python list comprehension. Now next, I'm going to start adjusting the amount column. The way that you access a column or the values in a column in Pandas is you simply reference the name of the column. So when I write df amount here, what that actually gives me is all of the amounts in this column, So we have date, details, amount, and then if we look here, we have a date, we have some details, and then we have the amount, which is a string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to convert it essentially into a valid number. Now, if you had a different column and maybe it wasn't amount or it was like value or something, then you would swap what I'm showing here, amount, with value, So feel free to adjust these based on the data that you're going to be loading. But in my case, my CSV file looks like this, and these are my column names. So that's how I'm loading it. But you can load it however you want. And again, just try to use some critical thinking skills and adjust based on what I'm explaining. So I'm going to say df amount is equal to, and then I'm going to grab my df amount, but I'm going to adjust this. So I'm going to say dot string, dot replace, and I'm going to replace a comma with an empty string, and then I'm going to say this is as type, and then float. Now this is a Pandas related operation, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying, all of the values that are in my amount column, I'm going to convert those to a string, I'm going to replace any commas that I see in those strings with an empty string. So essentially just remove any of the commas here because I don't want to have those. And then I'm going to take all of these values and I'm going to convert them to a float. That's what I'm doing. I need them to be a float so that I can actually get these values as a number rather than having them as a string, because obviously if it's a string, then we can't do our arithmetic operations on them. Next column that we're going to adjust is the date column. So we're going to say df date is equal to pd.to_datetime. All right, and we're going to take our data frame at the date column, and we're going to specify the date format that we want to convert this to. Now the format that we're going to use is going to be %d, %b, and %y. With a capital Y. Now essentially what this is doing is it's saying, we have some date column here, and this date is in the following format. Now this actually is going to be date, name of month, that's what this stands for, and then the year, okay? Now we want to convert this to a date time column so that we can use the correct date operations in Pandas. So that's why we're doing this. Now, if you look here, you could see that we have the day, we have the name of the month, not the month itself. If we had the month, it would be like 02, right? We have the name of the month, and then we have the year. So we're going to take all of these and we're going to convert them into a format that's valid with Pandas. That's what this is doing. You may not need this, but I'm going to add it for the date. Okay, so now we have that, and same thing, we can now write our data frame and just make sure this is working. So let's refresh. Let's load in our bank statement, and you can see now that we have this date time format. Okay, that's what we wanted. So the date looks better. The amount now, it's still showing up with commas. The reason for that is because it's being formatted like that when we show it in the data frame, but now these should actually be kind of normal number values, and we have everything else that we want to see. Okay, cool. So now that we've done that, the next step that we want to do is we want to start displaying the data frame based on the debits and the credits. So if we go here, you can see that we have a debit and we have a credit as another potential value. Now, a credit is like money that we've paid towards, in this case, the credit card, and a debit is a charge that we have on there. So because we have those two categories, we're going to start kind of categorizing the different data frames that we show based on that. So I'm going to go down to main here. And inside of main, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say if the data frame is not none, so if we do actually have a data frame, if this did load successfully, then we're going to start grabbing a data frame for our debits and a data frame for our credits. So we're going to separate it into two kind of different tables, right? So we're going to say our debits data frame is equal to data frame, and then we're going to do a filter operation in Pandas. Now you may not have seen this before, but what we can do is we can say data frame, and then we can use the name of our column, which is like debit, credit, okay? And then we can say this is equal to debit, and what this is going to do is it's going to give us a new data frame that only contains rows where the debit and credit column is debit. Okay, that's what it's doing. Now we're just going to make a copy of this, and then we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to go credits data frame, okay? And we're going to change this to say credit. Now you don't need to do this, especially if you don't have debits and credits and you're looking at just like a normal bank statement, or maybe the values have positive negatives, but in my case, this is how it works, okay? Or this is what I'm doing. All right, so now that I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some tabs so I can view either the debits data frame or the credits data frame, depending on what I want on the page. So I'm going to say tab 1 and then tab 2 is equal to st.tabs, okay? And then I can specify the names of the tabs I want to have. Now a tab is essentially like a toggle, right? Like I can toggle between tab 1 and tab 2, and you'll see what it looks like in 1 second. It's kind of hard to explain. So I'm going to have the first tab be expenses, which are my debits. And the second tab is going to be the, I guess, I don't know, payments or the credits. Okay? So the way that this works in Streamlit is you say st.tabs, you give the two titles of the tabs that you want to have, or you can have multiple tabs, like I could have tab 3 and then I could do another name right here. Just need to make sure that the variables match up with however many titles you have, and then what you can do is you can display the tabs. So you can say with tab 1, and then in tab 1 what we can do is say st.write, and we can write the debits underscore data frame. And then we can go down here and we can say with tab 2, and we can say st.write, and we can write the credits data frame. Okay, so those are two tabs. So now if we go back here and we refresh, we should see that we get those tabs, but they're just going to pop up once we load this in. So once I load sample bank statement, you can see down here that we have this that we're writing. We'll get rid of that in a second. And then we have expenses or credits. And you can see that when we click through them, we get all the card payments here and we get all the expenses here. And we have two separate data frames that are kind of being filtered for us. And actually we can even click and we can kind of sort through the data frame like this as well. Okay, so for now, let's get rid of this. We don't need to write the transactions. We can just display them in the tabs, and let's move on to the next step. All right, so the next step here is going to be to start to categorize our various transactions. Now, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to allow the user to manually create various different categories. Then we're going to get the user to select which transactions fit in which category, and we're going to store that information so that we don't need to do this multiple times and that we can apply the categorization to transactions that are of the same type. Now, I'm just going to show you what this actually looks like in practice because we're going to create a JSON file that looks something like this. Now, you see that we have uncategorized and there's nothing included in here. We have travel, and then there's all these different descriptions of things that are travel. We have subscription, and then these things that are subscriptions, equipment, insurance, etc. Okay, so our program or our code is going to make this file, and then we're going to use this file to be able to automatically categorize transactions when they come in because we'll have all of this information. So at the start, yes, it will require a little bit of work from the user because we're not using AI or anything like that for this particular project, although you could add that. But then later, once we have this file, it will be very fast and everything will be fully automated for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top of my program here, and I'm going to start setting up the different categories that we're going to need to store. Now, because you're not familiar with Streamlit, this will seem a little bit weird, but just bear with me. We're going to do an if statement on line 9 here, and we're going to say if categories is not in st.session_state, then what we're going to do is we're going to add it. Now we're going to say st.session_state.categories is equal to a dictionary, and in this dictionary we're going to start by having uncategorized, okay, and this is going to be equal to an empty list. Now in Streamlit we have something called state, okay? So the way that Streamlit actually operates is that anytime something changes on the page, like we upload a file or we press a button or we do something, the entire Python script is reran. Now, when that script is reran, we're gonna lose anything that we don't explicitly store in state. Okay, so what we're doing is we're creating this new piece of state called categories where we're storing all of the categories that the user has created so that when the Streamlit app reruns to refresh the page, because that's the way that it works, we don't lose this information. All right, so anything that you want to persist between reruns of the application needs to be stored in state, and things like our uploaded file are automatically stored in state for us by Streamlit. So this component right here where we do this file upload, the way that this actually works is that when we upload the file, internally Streamlit stores the file in this session state, that's what it's called, so that when this code is reran, this uploaded file variable now becomes equal to whatever was stored in this state. So then this if statement triggers, and then it lets us run all of this code. So on the first run of the application, there's nothing stored in state, so this code never runs, which means we don't see that UI component, right? We don't see this data frame. But then as soon as we upload a file, the code actually reruns. Uploaded file now becomes equal to this new variable, which is what's stored in state, and then this if statement now runs because this is true, and we display the data frame. So in between these reruns, anything that's not in state is going to be lost, so we need to store explicitly our categories in the session state, okay? Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to say if os.path.exists, okay? And this is going to be categories.json because we're checking to see if this file exists because we're going to make a JSON file. If it does exist, then what we're going to do is we're going to open it, and we're going to say with open categories.json. We're going to open this in R mode, which stands for read mode. We're going to open this as the variable f, and we're going to say again, let me copy this here, st.session_state.category, is equal to json.load and then f. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying, all right, we are going to essentially set the categories by default to be equal to just this one category called uncategorized, and it's not going to have anything inside of it. Then we're going to check, okay, does this file exist, this categories.json file? If it does, that means we already have some categories that we've used previously. So we're going to open this file in read mode. We're just going to open it as the variable f. And then we're going to load this file as JSON, which means we're going to load it like a Python dictionary and then use that as our categories. So by default, we always have this, but if we do have this categories.json file, which we're going to create in just 1 second, then we're going to load it in. Okay, so now beneath this, we're going to create a few functions that we need to use. So first, we're going to have a function called save underscore categories. Now here, we're going to say with open, categories.json. We're going to open this in W mode, and we're going to say as F. Then we're going to say json.dump, and we're going to say st, and then this is going to be session underscore state dot categories into this file. Now let me explain what's going on here. Essentially, we're writing a function where we're going to be able to now create this categories.json file. So if we call this, it's going to take whatever's in our session state, so whatever categories we've created, and it's going to put them inside of this file. That's all that's happening. Now, just because I noticed that we typed this twice, I'm going to take this categories.json and I'm just going to put this into a variable. So I'm just going to say my category underscore file is equal to this. And then here we can put our category file and just replace this so we're not writing the name multiple times and we don't potentially have a mistake here. Okay, so now we're using our category file. Perfect. So now we have the ability to save categories. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to have the ability to create new categories so that we can start storing those. So we're going to go down here into our main function, and we are going to add some components here to this tab, okay? So when we're in the tab for our expenses, before we write the data frame, we're going to have some content that allows the user to add a category. So to add a category, we can do the following. We can say new underscore category is equal to st.text underscore input. Okay, and for the text input, we can just say this is new category name. Then what we can have is a button. So we can say, add button is equal to st.button. And for the button, we're going to say add category like that. Okay, and then what we can do is we can say if the add button is pressed and we have a new category, then we can check the following. We're going to say if the new category is not in st.session underscore state dot categories. So we're just making sure that it doesn't already exist. If it does not already exist, then we're going to add it into that state. Now let me explain quickly what's going on here. Essentially, we have this new category, right? This is our text input, and we have this add button. If new category has some text value inside of it, and we press this button, which is what will be checked by this, then we will go to do this. And then here, of course, we're just making sure that the category we're about to add doesn't already exist. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say st underscore session state dot categories. Okay, and we can actually just modify this by adding a new category, which is the one that we had here. Okay, and we can just make this equal to an empty list. So right now, again, we have like this uncategorized, and then as soon as we actually add a category, it would go like this, and we'd say, new category, and then there'd be a new list here. And then inside this list, we would actually have all of the kind of transaction details that match with that category, which we'll use later on. So that's how we add it. But after we do that, we want to save this to a file. So we're going to say save categories. When we say save categories, we're going to call that function we just wrote. So we're going to save this and update our file with the new categories, which are currently in our state. Then we're going to have an st.success message, and we're just going to tell the user, hey, we added a new category. And if we want to tell them what that category is, then we can make this an f string, and we can just put the new category here like that. Okay, cool. And then last thing, we're just going to say st.rerun. What this is going to do is it's essentially going to force us to refresh the page and rerun from this part here so that we don't keep doing the rest of this. We just immediately rerun the entire Streamlit application. So now we will reload our new categories, and also we will recategorize our transactions, which we're going to do in 1 second. Okay, so I know I'm jumping around a lot here, but let's go over to Streamlit and let's just test this out. So let's add a file. Okay, and when we add a file, you can see now that it shows us the category and we have the ability to add a new category. So let's just do that. Let's add a new category and let's call this, I don't know, maybe shopping or something. Okay, and press add category. When we do that, a new category was added and the page was refreshed. Now we know that's the case because here we have this categories.json file, and now we have shopping and uncategorized here. One thing I just realized is that this st.success message doesn't end up running. That's because we rerun immediately. So we actually don't need this success message because we're not going to end up seeing it because, well, we rerun the application right after, and then it's going to clear that success message from the page. So let's just remove that because we just don't need it. Okay, so now we are adding the categories, and the next thing that we want to do here is we actually want to start categorizing our transactions based on the categories that we have here. So eventually we're going to have shopping, and then we're going to have something like Amazon will be inside of here. So anytime we see a transaction with Amazon details, we're going to categorize it as shopping. Okay, so keep that in mind when I write this next bit of code, which will seem a little bit complicated. All right, so after we have load transactions, we're going to write another function here, or sorry, before this, called categorize transactions. Okay, now what this is going to take in is our data frame, which we're loading from here. And we're going to look at the data frame and we're going to add a new thing, or a new column, sorry, called category. So we're going to say df and then category is equal to, and then uncategorized. Okay, now by default, what this is going to do is it's going to set every single new row to have a category field called uncategorized inside of our data frame. So it will essentially do this. It will say category, right? And then for all of these, they're going to by default be uncategorized. Okay, that's what it's doing. So we're doing that to start, because if something's not categorized, well, it's uncategorized. Then we're going to go and we're going to look through our list of categories here, and we're going to start applying the correct category to all of the transactions that we have. So we're going to say for category, comma, keywords in st dot, and this is going to be session state dot categories. Okay. What we're going to do is get the items, and then we're going to start going through here. Now, again, we're going session state, categories. Because this is a dictionary, it looks like this. We get the items, so we're going to get the category, which will be this, and the keywords, which will be this list. So now we're going to do the following. We're going to say if category is equal to uncategorized or not keywords, then we are going to continue. Now, the reason for this is we're never going to categorize something as uncategorized. So if we're looking at the uncategorized kind of column here, there's no need to do that. So we're just going to skip over it. And if we don't have any keywords that we're storing inside of here, so if it's just an empty list, then there's no way that we can actually categorize anything. So we're just going to move on. Because again, we're looping through each individual category and we're going to see which transactions apply to that. Okay, so now if we are in a position where we do have a valid category and that category does have some keywords that apply to it, what we're going to do is the following. We're going to say for idx and then comma row in df.iter rows. Okay, now what this will do, we need two R's, is it's just going to iterate over each row in our data frame as if it was like a list, and then we're going to be able to access all of the values that are in that row. So we're going to start by saying details are equal to the row, and then this is going to be at the details column. Okay, this is going to get us the individual details of a transaction, so it would get us like this, for example, card payment received, or Lulu hypermarket, or whatever that is. Okay, so we say details equals row details, and then we're going to convert this to dot lowercase so that when we do the matching, there's no issue. And then actually up here, we're going to say lowered keywords are equal to the following, and this is going to be keyword dot lower for keyword in keywords, and we're also going to strip this. Okay, so sorry, what we're doing here is we're just creating a new list of keywords where we're converting all of them to lowercase and we're stripping any of the leading or trailing spaces, so there's no issue matching these up. And then for our details down here, we're also going to strip these, and then we're going to say if details is in the lowered keywords, then that means that this category fits this particular transaction. So we're going to say df.at, and this is going to be idx, and then category is going to be equal to our category, and that's that. So effectively what we do here is we loop through all of the categories that we have. We convert these categories into something that are easier to match to make sure that if there's like a lowercase or an uppercase or something that doesn't conflict with us matching the categories. We then loop through every single row in our data frame. We get the transaction details. We check if those details match with any of the keywords that we have for this particular category. And if they do, we update the category of that particular row or transaction in our data frame. Now, there are much more efficient ways to do this, but this is fine for now. It's good enough for this tutorial. And then down here, what we're going to do is we're going to return our data frame. So this is kind of where the magic happens, where we're going to look at this file. We're going to get all of the categories and all of the keywords, and we're going to categorize the transactions using those, okay? So that's what we're doing with this particular function. So what we want to do now is in load transactions, before we return the data frame, we want to categorize it. So we're going to return, let me just copy this here, categorize transactions, data frame. Okay, so rather than just returning the data frame, we're first going to call categorize transactions on it. That's going to give us the new data frame with the category column, and then we can show that. So now if we go back to Streamlit, we refresh and we add a new file here, we should see that we have the category. Okay, now for some reason we're getting this unnamed 6 thing. I don't know why we have that, so I'll look into that in 1 second. But anyways, you can see now all of the categories are uncategorized. And if we were to actually manually adjust our file here, so for categories, let's say we go in here and we write something like noon.com. Okay, so this is actually transaction details that we have in our simple bank statement. You can see right here. Now we should see that that particular transaction, if I refresh here and load it in, will now be categorized as shopping. So if I go here, you can see we have shopping and we have noon.com. And anywhere else that we have noon.com, it should be categorized as shopping automatically. Okay, hopefully that's making sense, but that's kind of how that works. All right, so one last function we're going to write here, and then we're going to move on to writing more of the UI, is we're just going to write a function that will allow us now to add essentially these keywords into the particular categories. So we have the ability to create the category and we can manually add them here, but obviously the key component of this is we need to have all of these keywords or transaction details associated with the category, so we need a way to do that. So we're going to write a function called add keyword, okay, to category. We're just going to take in the keyword that we have as well as the category. So actually, let's first go with category and then keyword. And here we're going to say keyword is equal to keyword dot strip. So again, we're just going to remove any of those leading or trailing white spaces. And we're going to say if keyword, so if you did actually give us a keyword, and keyword is not in st session underscore state dot categories, okay, and then this is going to be the category. So if it doesn't already exist inside of there, then we're going to say st session underscore state dot categories, and then at category dot append the keyword. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying, all right, let's make sure we do actually have a keyword. It's not an empty string. Let's make sure it's not already in the category. If it's not, then we'll add it. To do that, we get the session state categories, we get the category itself, we then append this keyword into that list, and then we call save categories, and we can return true here to indicate this worked. Otherwise, we would return false because that means that they actually didn't give us a valid keyword. Okay, so now we have the function to add a keyword to the category, and now what we need to do is start using some of these functions from our user interface. So what we want to do is we want to scroll down here, and we want to go to where we're writing this debits data frame. And rather than just writing the debits data frame, we're going to display it in kind of a more, styled way, where we actually will be able to edit the data frame and assign various categories to each of the transactions from there, like I showed you in the demo. So in order to do this, we're going to say st.subheader, okay, and we're going to say your expenses like that. We're then going to say our edited underscore data frame is equal to st.data underscore editor. And what we're going to do here is we're going to start displaying our data frame. Now, before we do that, we are going to actually just store our data frame in session storage. We're going to do that to ensure that when we change the data frame in this data frame editor, it doesn't affect the original data frame. I know this seems weird, just bear with me. I get it's a little bit complicated, but we need to essentially have a copy of this in session storage. So up here, after we create the debits data frame, we're going to say st.session underscore state, okay, and then this is going to be dot the debits underscore data frame. Let's spell this correctly. is going to be equal to the debits data frame dot copy. So we're going to make a copy of that again. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use this data frame. So here we're going to display it. Now to do that, we're going to say st.session_state dot the debits underscore data frame. And what we can do is we can actually put a list of the columns that we do want to display. So in this case, I want to display the date, I want to display the details, I want to display the amount, and I want to display the category. Okay, so this is how you can filter the data frame and just get out rows that you want to display, or sorry, columns that you want to display. So we do data frame, we have kind of this opening list, or opening, I don't know, square brackets, whatever you want to call them. And then inside of here, we have a list of all of the columns that we want to show. So now we'll filter this and it won't show the other ones. All right, now we also can add this column underscore config. Now for the column config, we put a Python dictionary and we can reference these columns and mention how we want them to be displayed. So for example, for our date, we want this to be st.column underscore config. And then this is going to be .date column. Okay, so we're not going to show the time, and we're going to say date. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have day / month / year. Okay, so we say that's how we want to display the date. Then for the amount, for example, we can say for the amount, we want this to be st dot, and this will be column config. And for the number column, we want to reference the amount, and we want to display it like this. So we're going to say format is equal to, we're going to say %.2f. What this means is we're going to display 2 decimal places, and then I'm going to put AED because I want to show the currency of Durham. Okay, then we're going to say category. This one will be a little bit more complicated, but this is going to be st.columnConfig. This one is going to be a select box column. Inside of here, oops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's go back up here. I'm not sure what I just typed there. We are going to show the category, okay? And we're going to say the options for our select box are going to be a list, and this is going to be of st session_state.categories.keys. Okay, so we just grab all of the categories that we have, we're going to convert those to a list, and those are going to be the options that we have for the select box. Then after this, we're going to say hide index is equal to true, so that we don't end up showing the index on the left-hand side. We're going to say use container width is equal to true. This means we're going to make the data frame be the entire width of the page. And then we're going to add a key. We need this key just to identify this data frame from other ones. And we're going to call this the category editor. Okay, so this is our edited data frame. Now this will be displayed on the page, and what we're going to do after this is we're going to allow the user essentially to edit this data frame to change the categories or change values that are inside of here, and then we're going to have a button. So I'm going to have a button here, and I'm going to say save button is equal to st.button. Here we're going to say apply changes, and we're just going to say the type is equal to primary, which will just set the color. Then we're going to say if they press this save button, what we're going to do is we're going to check if any changes were made to the data frame. And if they were, we are going to essentially take that change and apply that to our categories. So we're just going to say save button. For now, I'm going to say pass, and we'll do that operation in 1 second. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go back here. Let's refresh. I'm going to close this other one now because we don't really need that. Let's open this up. And we got an issue here saying data column takes 0 to 1 positional arguments, but 2 were given. Okay, so what is the problem here? So I forgot to specify the format keyword here. So in our date column, we just need to have format, and then this should work. So let's go back here. Let's refresh. Okay, and let's add our sample bank statement. And you can see now that it shows the ability to add the categories, and then we have our data frame. And the interesting thing is that if I click into here, you can see that I can actually select the category. So I have uncategorized, shopping, and I can start changing that in the data frame. And then later, when we press on apply changes, we'll actually take those changes and save those. Cool. Now for right now, let's try to add a new category. So let's go with something like, I don't know, travel, because that's a big one that we have here. And when we add that now, we should see that travel now pops up in these categories that we can use. Okay, sweet. So now we obviously need to handle this save button so that the changes that are made will actually be applied. Okay, so in here, what we're going to do is we're going to start looping through our edited data frame. So we're going to say for index comma row in the edited underscore data frame. Sorry, this is in edited data frame. And then this is going to be dot iter rows like that. What we're going to do is we're just going to start checking these values and we're going to compare them to the data frame that we stored in our session state. So we take the edited data frame, we compare it to the original data frame, we see if any changes were made. If they were, then we apply them. So here we're going to say if the row at category does not equal st dot session underscore state, and then this can be dot debits underscore data frame dot at the index and then category, then what this means is a change was made. So actually, I'm going to reverse this operation just to make the code a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to say if the row category does equal st.session.state.debits data frame at the current row and then category, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say continue. Now what that means is, okay, if no change was made in this particular row, then we can just continue. Now if there was a change made in this particular row, so we're going to say details is equal to, and this is going to be the row at details. We're then going to say the new category is equal to row at category. And in fact, we can actually just specify that here. So we can say new category like this. We can then swap this variable, so we can say new category, and now we don't need to define that here. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the code as we go. So we get the new category from this row. Now, if this is the same as the old one, there's nothing we need to do. Otherwise, we'll get the details here, and we'll use that now to update our state. So we're going to say st.session underscore state dot debits underscore data frame dot at index, and then we're going to say category is equal to the new category, and we're going to say add keywords to category, and we're going to say new category and then details. Okay, so effectively what this is doing is we're saying, all right, was any change made? If a change was made to the category, we're going to get the details of where this change was made. We're then going to update that. So we're going to say st session state.debits dataframe.at and then our index and category. So we go to the state and modify this so that we now in the state change the category, and then as well as changing it in the state, we're actually going to save that as well. We save that by actually adding it to the JSON file. So when we say add keyword to category, that's what that does. And if you come here, you can see we're calling that function. Okay, so that change will be made, and now that should be good. So let's test this out and see if this works. So we're going to refresh, we're going to bring in our bank statement, and let's start making a change. So Emirates Insurance, for example, let's change this. Actually, let's make a new category called insurance. All right, let's go to Emirates Insurance. Let's make this insurance, and we need to press save. So we're going to press apply changes. And now if we were to refresh and we were to bring this in again, so let's go and just check this out. We should see that we have insurance for Emirates Insurance, and we do. Now let's do a few other ones. Let's do noon.com. Let's make that shopping. Maybe Lulu is shopping as well. Let's apply those changes. And if we want to test, we can go here to categories, and you can see now that all of this is saved. So in shopping, we have noon.com and Lulu Hypermarket. And for insurance, we have the Emirates Insurance. Okay, so that is working. We now are actually kind of using this button correctly, and we're updating the categories. And let me zoom out a little bit here. What we're going to do next is we're just going to start writing some of the visualizations and the charts on screen. So now that we have the categories working, we want to kind of show summaries of those categories because that's the meaningful part. And we want to show like those figures or those charts, right, using Plotly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say st.subheader. And we're going to say expense summary. And we're going to display a table now that shows the various expenses. So to do that, we're going to say the category underscore totals is equal to st session underscore state dot debits underscore data frame dot group by. Okay. And we're going to group this by the category. We then are going to grab the amount. We're going to sum that, and we're going to reset the index. Okay, now I know that's confusing. This is a more advanced Pandas operation. Essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the data frame that we're storing in the state so that it has all of the changes from the categories that we've made. We're grouping it by category. We're grabbing the amounts of all of the categories in those groupings. We're summing them, and then we're resetting the index. Okay, and if you look at reset index, it says generate a new data frame or series with the index reset, which is what we're doing. So there we go. Okay, so now we have the category totals, and since we have the category totals, we're also just going to sort them. So we're going to say the category underscore totals is equal to the category totals dot sort underscore values, and we'll just sort this by the amount, and we can go ascending is equal to false, so that we sort it in descending order. Now, you don't need to do this if you don't want to, but I'm just sorting it so it's a little bit easier to see. All right, now that we have that, we're going to display this as an additional data frame. So to do that, we can say st.dataframe. This time we don't need to do an editable data frame because, well, we're not editing any data, we're just displaying the data frame. We're going to show the category totals. That's the data frame we want to display. And let's provide some configuration as well. So for the configuration, we're going to say the column config is equal to, and this is going to be our dictionary. Let me just fix my parenthesis here so it doesn't run off on me. Okay, in the column config, I am going to have an amount, and this amount is going to be st.columnconfig.number column. This is going to be amount, and then the format is going to be the same as what we used before. So I'm going to say format is equal to %.2f and then AED, so that we show that this is in dirhams rather than say US dollars or something. Okay, now other than column config, we're going to say use the container width is equal to true, and we're going to say the hide index is equal to true as well, because we don't really need to display that. Okay, so now if we go back, let's go here and refresh, and let's go browse files and sample bank statement. You see now that we get this expense summary. We have uncategorized, shopping, and insurance. We can actually just change this as well if we want to do the sorting. And as we start categorizing more things, then they will show up here in the expense summary. Cool. So next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we display kind of like a chart on screen. So for the chart, what we can do here is we can say our figure is equal to px.pie. This is how we do a pie chart. For the pie chart, we're going to display the category totals that we just got. We're going to say the values are equal to the amount. We're going to say the names are equal to the categories, right? And then we can have a title of this. And for the title, we're going to say this is expenses by category. Now we're using Plotly Express for this, which has so many different options. And there are tons of charts that you can create here. I'm just showing you a simple pie chart because, well, that's the easiest one to do. Okay, now that we've created the figure, we need to show it on screen. To show it on screen, we can say st.plotly_chart. This is what we use to display a Plotly chart. We're going to display the figure, and we're going to say use container width is equal to true, so it takes up the entire width of the screen. Okay, so let's go back. Again, refresh here, open this up, same sample bank statement, and we got an error here saying pi got an unexpected keyword tile. Okay, we need to call this title. So let's save that and go back, and same thing, bring this in. And now you should see that we have our pie chart showing up. And cool thing is you can actually kind of zoom in on this. You can make it larger, all kinds of interactions. You can take a photo of it. You can view it in Plotly.js, a lot of interesting stuff. So let's do a few more categorizations to make this a little bit better. So I'm going to sort this. Let's go Amazon, shopping. Okay, apply changes. Emirates insurance. Okay, that's insurance. Noon is shopping. What else do we have? Amazon, okay, shopping, so let's apply changes. And what else? This is travel, okay, maybe let's add another one. Bank fee, so let's do that, add category. I see this, let's make that a bank fee and save. Netflix, let's add one for subscriptions. Okay, where's Netflix? Netflix. Where am I missing Netflix? There we go. Make this subscriptions, apply changes. As we go down here, you can see this is dynamically updating, and now the pie chart is kind of getting more filled in. Cool. Now, the next thing I do want to do is I just want to display this a little bit nicer. So we have the payments, but I want to show kind of a sum of all of the payments that were made. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go here to my tab 2. We can keep writing the credits data frame, but first I'm going to add a subheader. So I'm going to say subheader here. And for the subheader, I'm going to go income summary. Or let's go, maybe payment summary is probably better. Okay, payment summary. And we're going to do the following. We're going to say st.metric. Okay, and this is going to be total income, or total payments. And for here, we're going to say f. We're going to put a string, and then we're going to have a variable up here. So let me just write this. Total payment is equal to the credits data frame, and this is going to be amount, and then dot sum. Okay, so this just sums the amount, and then we can display this. We can display the total payments, and then we can filter this as, or format this, as a :.2f, and then put this in AED. Okay, so now if we go back here and we look at this, and we browse and we open this bad boy up and we go to payments, you can see it shows us the total sum of payments. And actually, last thing, if I add a comma here before the dot, now it will start separating the value out with a comma. So that's a little bit easier to see. So let's just bring this in one more time. And when we go to payments, now you can see that it's separated that. Okay, cool. So that is going to wrap up this video. That was our kind of personal finance automation tool here. Obviously, there is a lot more stuff that we can write, and I do understand this is a little bit complicated, especially for a beginner, because we're using Pandas, we're using JSON, we're using Streamlit, we're loading a lot of stuff. But I wanted to show you how to do this in pure Python because I think it's really interesting, and I hope that this video taught you a lot and got you up and started with a really cool application. There are so many more things that we could do here. We could really take this to the next level, but that's going to wrap up this video. And again, I hope it kind of gave you that inspiration. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. All of this code will be available from the link in the description, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.